Welcome to Zoom In on Science and our Capture STEM panel. My name is CSO Haley from Oregon, and it is my pleasure to help host today's call. In just a few minutes, we will hear from 4 professionals who make capturing a story their life's work. As each panelist presents, please post your questions in the chat. Please remain muted, and if we run into bandwidth issues, we may ask you to turn off your video to allow better streaming of the presentation.
Really excited to be here today and to be helping to host this panel with you, Haley, so thank you. So welcome to the call, and thank you for joining us, Sam, Deia, Bethany, and Jeff. We are excited to hear more about who you are, what stories you're able to tell in your line of work, and your call to action you have for our Chief Science Officers as young leaders and advocates in science, technology, engineering, and math. Again, my name is CSO Chalet, and I am from Arizona.
Sam, as a videographer, you are truly skilled at capturing images that evoke emotion. I'm currently learning more about storytelling through my school's film and TV program. My name is CSO Ben from Arizona. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to our participants and share why you enjoy making videos for companies to help tell their stories.
Sure thing. Thank you, Ben. It's great to be here with you guys, and I get to share a little bit about what I do. So my name is Sam Pagel. I am the Chief Creative Officer at Resound, which is based in Tempe, Arizona. What we get to do is we get to tell the stories of a lot of really cool businesses. And what I love about that is we're not just working in one industry. We're not just working in the car manufacturing industry or the education industry. We get to do and learn about a lot of different things that our companies and clients do. So one of the main aspects of what I've been doing for almost the past 10 years is video production. And what I love about video production, and I think you guys touched on it there, is you can tell a story in what I think is one of the most effective ways, because you can evoke emotion through how you present a story in video. So one of the cool things that I like to tell people about why video is so powerful is think about your 5 senses. And what if you could choose to keep only one of your 5 senses, which one would you keep? And you don't have to share it on the call, but think about that. Now, if it were me, I think what I would choose first is my sight. I would want to keep my sight. Now think about the second one. I think I would want to keep my hearing. So I'd want to keep my sight and my hearing. Those are, to me, my 2 most important senses. I love food. I love tasting food, and I love, touching cool, things or feeling things with my fingers or whatever it is. And I love smelling things. Those 3 are great, but I would want to keep my sight and my hearing. So think about those two senses, and we experience the world so much through our hearing and through our sight. And if you think about video, what are the 2 senses that you use to consume video? It's your sight and it's your hearing. And so a lot of people think video, oh, let's get a really nice 4K camera and a really nice TV so we can watch something and see it very clearly. Well, that's a huge part of it, but it's also the sound that you can include with video. So it's someone's voice, or it's a really nice music track. Think about all the probably your favorite movies. There's really cool visuals, but there's also really powerful sound. So video production is, to me, the greatest form of media and storytelling that you can do. So that's why I love that. I love learning about my clients and my companies that I serve, and getting to craft a really creative and fun video experience for them. So that's a little bit about what I do. If you guys have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Sam. That was very cool. And the question is very complicated to answer because I don't know what I would do without taste or touch. So yeah, food is too good to just give it up. So it is clear that you're talented and passionate about your work. So Deia, Capturing video and telling the story is key to your work as well. Please tell us more about your role as a director of documentary films, including the story of plastic. Can you please introduce yourselves to our participants?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting. So yes, I'm a documentary filmmaker. I've done a little bit of work in the fiction world, but mostly documentary. I'll just give you a little bit of backstory, like how I got to filmmaking, and then a little bit more about the career itself. So I am from New York State, a little tiny town called Newark Valley, in upstate New York, far from the city. I went to college at Washington University in St. Louis, and I studied Earth and Planetary Science and Visual Communications, because I couldn't really decide which I was more excited about, science and the environment or the arts and communication. So I did both. And then after school, I had a lot of different jobs. You can see that I worked as a writer, a teacher, an animator, an illustrator, a photographer, a wilderness guide, a graphic designer, an environmental educator, and a wilderness therapy instructor. And nothing quite combined everything that I studied and everything I was super passionate about. I learned a lot from doing all those jobs, but nothing quite hit me. And then I spent 2 years backpacking the length of the Andes, which gave me a lot of time to think about what I really wanted to do with my life and where I felt like I could make the most impact with the skills that I had. And toward the end of that journey, it occurred to me that documentary filmmaking combines everything that I love and am passionate about into one career. So I moved to Bozeman, Montana. There's a grad school there that has a program in science and natural history filmmaking, which I felt, when I found that, I thought, oh my gosh, this was made for me. So I moved to Montana. I got a job. I applied for the program. I got in and did a lot of films as part of that program. A lot of short films, working on a lot of different people's student films. And then my thesis for that program was a half-hour documentary film called Backyard that looked at the impacts of fracking on people and communities. And that ended up going to a lot of film festivals, and I met a lot of amazing people in the film world that way, which got me connected to other filmmakers. And from there, I started working with Josh Fox, who made the Gasland movies. And I worked with him on I produced his film, How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change, which was at Sundance and played on HBO. And I made a few other films from there. I worked again with him on this movie called Awake, A Dream from Standing Rock, that looked at the story of the water protectors at Standing Rock. And that was on Netflix. Most of the stories I've covered have been climate change related and human rights related, ending up with the story of plastic this past year. And that was an amazing experience to make. We finished this past year, but it took about 3 years to make, from our first research and interviewing people all over the world to see who would be the best to talk to, who could tell the story the best, and then going to actually filming with them, traveling around the world, filming on location, filming our interviews in all different countries, and really learning about this issue from a different narrative than the one that we typically hear from. So one of our main goals in making this film was to tell the story that we hadn't seen yet. For so long, the story of plastic was the story of plastic pollution and plastic in the oceans. And I knew from my experience working with fracking and petrochemicals and that whole industry that that's where plastic comes from, and why weren't we hearing that story? So we really wanted to tell the whole story and connect all these dots and look at how the plastic industry is affecting people and environments from the local level where it's first extracted from the ground all the way through as it's processed in different places through when it becomes plastic, and then quickly plastic waste and where it ends up. And we looked at the idea of recycling and the myths around recycling, and this story that largely the plastics and petrochemical industry has told us, that it's people's personal responsibility to not litter and to recycle, when that's such a small piece of the picture. And the real story is that they need to stop making this stuff because there is nowhere for it to go. So just looking at some of the, I'll just go around and point out some of the photos we've got here. Let's see where to start. So the top left is we were filming in Java, Indonesia, and a lot of scrap plastic from the global north gets shipped over there. And all of that plastic scrap that you see here that the kids are walking through is largely packaging and materials that come from our packages. So we would recognize the brands and everything that they had to walk through and live with. So we wanted to dispel the myths that so much of plastic pollution comes from Asia, when the reality is a lot of it comes from the global north and gets sent to Asia or Southeast Asia to be dealt with. So they aren't the ones responsible for making it. The next image there is a recycling facility in California. The next image and the one at the bottom there are we worked with an amazing animator to show the most complex, to illustrate the most complex parts of the story that we couldn't really film because they were too abstract. So we worked with animators on those. And then there's an incinerator outside of New Delhi in India. A lot of plastic waste just gets burned. Below that is a refinery in Houston, Texas, where a lot of plastic products get made into plastics and shipped all over the world to get made into other materials. The bottom right is in Manila, Philippines. This was after a massive storm. All this plastic gets washed out of the rivers and into the bay, and then washes up on the shore, and people go out and clean it up every time there's a major storm. The fishing shot, it's another, we went out with fishermen in Manila also, and they shared that they're more and more catching plastic rather than catching fish. So now almost half of what they catch is plastic. And they have to deal with that, and they aren't the ones that are responsible for making that plastic. And then there's that aerial shot of a community in also in East Java, where those kids from the first picture were living. And we used the last picture there is an old archival shot, and in the bottom middle also we used a lot of old archival footage of commercials and PSAs back from starting in the 30s all the way through present day, that is kind of the voice of industry. And it was pretty fun going through all of the old materials and seeing some of the propaganda basically that's out there. Some of the clips were pretty entertaining, even though it led to a lot of tragedy around the world. the build out of these processes. So that's the story of plastic. And right now I'm working on a documentary series called Bootstraps that looks at universal basic income. We've been following 11 families all over the US for the past 3 years who are receiving a basic income, and we look at how it impacts their lives. And it's become more and more a topic of discussion since the pandemic hit, which is exciting for our storytelling. And it makes it pretty clear that everybody would benefit from a system like that. But I don't want to go over my time too much, so that's filmmaking for me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Deia, for sharing. We are so excited to have you back on the call, and we are very grateful for the opportunity that you gave us to watch the story of plastic. It is truly a powerful collection of stories of plastic pollution. So up next, we would like to introduce Bethany Brookshire, who we were able to meet in Washington, D.C. during our first CSO International Summit. And I know that all of the CSOs present on the call today who were there can say that it was an amazing presentation, and I think that we all thoroughly enjoyed it. So welcome, Bethany. We're excited to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you so much, and no pressure. Wow, like, how do I live up to my past self? I'm sitting here being like, this is going to be awful. Anyway, I have been told I have 5 minutes to introduce myself, and so in the interest of full disclosure, 5 minutes, that thing's going to go off, and it'll be embarrassing. I'm going to, it doesn't want to let me share my screen. That's fun.
1 minute down.
Oh no! Ah!
No pressure.
I can't deal. I am a science journalist. I work at Science News Magazine and Science News for Students. And one of the things that I have learned as a science journalist in my now like 7 years, I think, of journalism is that the most important thing that you need as a professional science communicator or science journalist is trust. And so I'm asking you, why should you trust me? Why should you trust anything that I have to say to you? So here's my disclosure. I have a PhD. So I was born in Western Virginia. It's a small town. You've probably never heard of it. Don't worry about it. I went to college. I got a 2 degrees actually in philosophy and in biology. And I really liked philosophy a lot, actually, like really liked it. I liked logic, but I was aware that philosophers don't really eat well. They don't make a lot of money. And I don't want to make a lot of money, but I would like to eat. And so, you know what makes a living? Science. I went to grad school. I got a PhD in physiology and pharmacology from Wake Forest University, studying addictive drugs. Most particularly, I focused on stimulants, the fun drugs, cocaine, that sort of thing. And then after that, I did a postdoc at University of Pennsylvania studying mental illnesses, including depression. So I mostly worked with antidepressants. And during that whole time, I was like kind of losing my purpose a bit. It was not going well, actually. It turns out I wasn't a super great scientist, to be clear. I mean, it wasn't bad, but I wasn't great. And so I thought maybe I would like to try teaching, but in my programs, they wouldn't let me do teaching. So I started a blog on the internet back when that was a thing. And it turned out that I was good at it. So I kept doing that the whole time I was getting my PhD and the whole time I was doing my postdoc, which is what you do after your PhD. You do 1 or 2 of them in the hopes that then someone will hire you on as faculty to be a professor. That only happens 10% of the time. Keep that one in mind. Anyway, but so then after my postdoc, I actually went to try and get a tenure track job at a college. I always wanted to be a college professor, and I could not get one. I actually failed out of academia. And so I was like, you know what? I'm pretty good at this writing thing. Maybe I should try that out. So I did. I just quit. I quit science completely, and I started writing full time. And after about 6 months of freelancing, I got hired as a journalist at Science News and Science News for Students. I've been there ever since, except for the past year where I was actually on sabbatical doing a fellowship in science journalism at MIT, which was awesome. I also have started hosting a podcast called Science for the People. It's exactly what it says on the tin. So what is what I do? What is science news? Science news is what it says on the tin. Everything I do is very obviously labeled. So this is actually a screenshot of what our science news website looked like as of Friday at 4:22 p.m. I want to say. Somebody can fact check me on that. But basically we take the latest in scientific research and we turn it into stuff that people who are not scientists can read, because you guys are sciencey people. You understand scientific research is not always written in an easily digestible way. So we wade through it, we read the literature, we call the experts, and we try to tell you, here's what you can trust, here's why you can trust it. And if you can't trust it, we tell you why. And I was informed that I got 3 slides, and my 3rd slide was allowed to be my call to action. And I was like, what's my call to action? My call to action is trust no one, which I realize sounds kind of negative. No, that's positive. It's a journalism thing. So there is this saying in journalism, if your mother tells you she loves you, get a second opinion. Okay? Always be careful about what you hear and whether it agrees with what you already believe. And that's especially important right now with the whole COVID thing, the whole pandemic situation, which has all of us working extremely long hours. There's a lot of misinformation going around on the internet. And some scientific information is good, some is bad. Some scientific information is complicated. Some of the advances are very small. And some of the things that we want to have solid opinions on are things we don't know about. And so as an example of that, I have this infographic, which you may have seen floating around on the internet. I found this particular one on Facebook. I've also seen it on Twitter. I haven't seen it on TikTok yet or Instagram, but I give it like 24 hours. And this is a little infographic saying, oh, well, if you wear a mask, then you'll be able to, like, if somebody else without COVID wears a mask, then they'll be protected 70% of the time. If a carrier wears a mask, the other person has a 5% probability of getting COVID. Here's the thing about this infographic, which is super cute. No one knows those numbers. Nobody. I'm sorry. We don't have that data. It's going to be a while till we do. Those are tough studies to do. But people share numbers like that because it makes them feel good. And the reality is that your bias, your feelings, and your gut are terrible arbiters of the truth. And I feel bad about saying that. But this is just to say, I think you guys are the perfect audience for this because you all are smart. You know what's up. You're probably already doing this and you can spread it to your friends. When you read scientific news, especially now, ask yourself, who wrote it? Where did they publish it? If it's science, what is it based on? Is there a link? Is the science peer-reviewed by other scientists? Did they quote someone not involved in the study? Are the findings too good to be true? And does this make you feel more than it makes you think? Because that is the #1 hallmark of clickbait. Okay? And that was more than 5 minutes, and I'm done.
Bethany, you truly inspired the first group of CSOs in DC, and I can imagine we will all leave the call today with a purpose in mind. Thank you. Our final panelist is Jeff, and he is probably the most like a CSO. He started with an idea, and the impact continues to grow. Jeff, please tell us more about Litterati.
Well, thank you very much, and hello, everybody. I don't know if I'm the most like a CSO. I mean, everybody that has spoken so far, I feel like has really raised the bar. I'm just honored to be included in the group. So I guess I'll start with my story of how Litterati began. I was hiking in the woods with my 2 little kids, and my 4-year-old daughter noticed this plastic tub of cat litter lying in a creek. And she just looked at me and she said, "Daddy, that doesn't go there." And, you know, it's amazing how your kids can open your eyes to the world in a way that you had never seen before. And when she said that, it reminded me of when I was a kid. I used to go to summer camp. And on the morning of visiting day, the camp director would say, quick, everybody go pick up 5 pieces of litter. So you get a couple hundred kids, we're each picking up 5 pieces. And within a few minutes, we had a spotless camp. And I thought, why not apply that crowdsourced behavior to the entire planet? And that was the inspiration for starting Litterati. So what happened next, let me share my screen here. What happened next was a little bit weird. I took a photograph of a cigarette butt using Instagram. So maybe this was my first scientific experiment, but I had no idea what I was doing at the time. But I took a photo, and then I took another photo, and another photo. And I noticed a couple of things happening to me. The first was litter and trash suddenly became artistic and therefore approachable, right? The bottle cap on the ground that I either didn't notice or walked past suddenly became a really cool photo opportunity. The second thing that happened was after a week, I had 50 or 60 photos on my phone, and I picked up every single piece I photographed. And I realized that the same way people are measuring the steps they walk, the miles they ride, or even the calories they consume, I was measuring the positive impact I was having on the planet. No clue what I could do with that information. I just thought it was cool. So I started telling people. And to make a long story just a tiny bit longer, what started out as this hashtag on Instagram has now grown into an iOS application, an Android application, and a full technology backend infrastructure and database. And back to the camp example, a community that's now in 165 countries who have collectively picked up 5.8 million pieces of trash. And through that process, created this massive global database. And so that's who we are. We are a community, empowering one another to make a difference in how we clean the planet. And it's all driven through data. So, to take a point that Bethany was just talking about, the importance of data when pushing science forward, the importance of transparency. For us, what transparency means is understanding exactly what is lying all over our streets, our playgrounds, our beaches, and in the ocean. And the way we do that is really simple. We like to call it simple yet sophisticated. So anybody can join the Litterati community. You snap a photo. And we like to say it's one click and you're done. But ideally what happens is we're able to understand who picked up what, where, and when, all from a photograph. Now, there's a geotag and a timestamp that are automatically affixed to the photo, right? So we're able to map problem areas and understand when certain things are picked up. But the what is such a critical part of this whole equation. And for us, the what is, what are the objects? What are the materials? What are the brands? And so we use AI, or something called computer vision, to look at every single photograph and extract what are all those brands? What are all those materials? What are all of those objects? And we use that data at scale with people all over the world to work with cities, to help them understand what's lying all over their streets, their playgrounds, their beaches, etc. We work with corporate brands to help them understand where all of their material is ending up. How can they create more sustainable packaging? We work with a bunch of NGOs, empowering them to better map and measure the impact they're already having. And we work with quite a few schools. So we've created a curriculum and a Litterati school program that's in hundreds of schools around the world. Now, data and technology are great, but at the end of the day, it's about what you do with them, right? We've been talking about stories. We call them stories of impact. So I'm going to give you a couple really quickly. The first story that blew me away was actually by a bunch of students in a place called Modesto, California, 5th graders. They picked up 1,247 pieces of litter just on their schoolyard, and they learned from the data that the most common type of litter were the plastic straw wrappers from their own cafeteria. That's my timer, Bethany, that just went off. See, I got your back. And they learned from the data that those were the most common type of litter. So they went to the principal and said, why are we still buying straws? And they stopped and eliminated that plastic from hitting the ground going forward. Just this past week, the Dutch Litterati community started focusing on something called anti-flu plastic wrappers. Pardon me, they started focusing on them about 10 months ago. They picked up 50,000, took all that data to the company, and just this past week, the company, as a result of the Litterati data, just changed all of their packaging from plastic to paper and wax. And so that's a couple of examples of how data and people can come together to really create change. And so I would invite you all to join us. We have a ton of youth that are part of the Litterati community. In fact, right now there's a group called the Ocean Heroes. They're part of something called the Ocean Heroes Boot Camp. And it's about 425 youth. They've just started their own Litterati challenge. They set a goal of 5,000 pieces by July 31st. They hit 5,000 pieces in the last 24 hours. And so when we all come together for the greater impact, it's amazing the changes that we can make. Thank you all for allowing me to share.
Wow, it's really incredible how fast you've been able to make an impact, Jeff. CSOs, you can make it happen just like Jeff did with his Litterati app. Before we break out into 4 rooms, we would like to ask each panelist, what advice would you give to your 14-year-old self? Sam, would you start?
Absolutely. All right. What advice would I give my 14-year-old self? Be prepared to work hard and don't be afraid to work hard. I started my business right out of college. And in college, I worked hard. And I thought, oh man, now that I'm out of college, work is just going to be easy. I don't have to study. I don't have to do homework. But it turned out that work is a lot harder than school, which is really cool. And it's really fun because as a business owner, I don't have someone telling me like, oh, it's time to stop. You know, you only work 40 hours a week. There's a kind of a funny saying that people who start their own businesses leave their 40-hour-a-week job to work 80 hours a week. So work hard. If you work hard and you do good work, then the sky's the limit.
Thank you. That's some really great advice. Deia, what about you?
What I would tell my 14-year-old self is trust yourself and your passions. There's not a prescribed way to accomplish something. If you're excited about doing it, you will make it happen. I had a principal in high school that tried to talk me out of taking art classes because he didn't think they were practical, and he knew that I wanted to go into science. And I didn't listen to him, and I took a bunch of art classes, and I use those skills every day in filmmaking. And I took the science classes too. Like, don't limit yourself. Trust what you're excited about and follow that.
Thank you, Deia. I love how determined you are to make sure you're following your passions and doing what you love to do. Bethany, how about you?
Yeah, I'm glad other people went before me because I had to think about it. But I would say don't let other people undermine your confidence with their prejudice. I have been told so many times, oh, you're just so confident. And the tone they're using for that is not a nice one. Or, haha, you think you're so smart. Yes, I don't think it, I know it. Don't let other people undermine your confidence and your abilities by telling you what you can't do. You know what you can or can't do.
That is definitely some great advice. And Jeff, we'll finish off with you. What advice would you give to your 14-year-old self?
You know, you hear Sam talk about hard work, and it's just so true, right? And Deia brings up this idea of purpose. And it is true, if you ask any of the three of us, it's a lot easier to get up in the morning for a purpose than just a paycheck. And, you know, and Bethany talking about trusting yourself. Like, actually, I think I got those turned around. Deia talked about that as well. But those are all such important pieces of advice. And I think for me, on top of that, it's really about, it takes time. Like, don't expect things to just happen overnight. These are difficult problems to solve, you know, and you have to, if I could really go back in time to talk to my 14-year-old self about what I would do, it would be to allow myself the understanding that it is going to take time. And everybody talks about follow your passion. And I think that's important. I would maybe alter that a little bit to follow the pain. Because if you're really upset about something, if something really pisses you off, there's a good chance it's going to bum somebody else out as well. And if you follow that pain and come up with a solution, there's a good chance you're going to turn on a lot of other people to want to join your cause.
Thank you everyone for sharing. That was all really great advice. So at this time, we are going to break out into 4 different breakout rooms to have some additional Q&A sessions with our panelists for another 15 minutes.
Thank you all so much. This has gone so well. So across your screen, you'll see join breakout room little invite that Hope is about to start. We'll stay in for about 15 minutes. You have CSO moderators, and then we'll see you back for closing statements in 15. So excellent work, panelists. I'm so proud to know all of you and have you in our network. So here we go. Let's break out.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope your breakout room was awesome. And there's Miss Kelly. All right, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. So it's actually Haley, but I just want to give Sam a shout out because we got to see a cool video from Kenya, and I'm a little jealous you all didn't get to see it and that I didn't record all of the breakout, but I got snippets. So stay tuned.
I'll be sure to send the link out for you guys later.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly. Welcome back, everybody. Panelists, please share how your breakout room went and any final words of advice. I know, Bethany, we had a great time just kind of chatting in our room, but let's start with Sam. How did your breakout room go, and any words of advice for the CSOs on the call?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I wasn't in the other 3 breakout rooms, but I'm pretty sure ours was the best. So so yeah, we talked about creative work. We talked about I think right at the end was probably my favorite part, because it's the importance of storytelling. So you could have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of video equipment. You could shoot it in 10K and you could have everything perfect, but if you don't know how to craft that story and tell that story well, it won't be effective. So, so we talked about choosing the right background music and choosing the right clips from your interviews that you shoot, and just taking, with the Kenya video, taking hours and hours of footage shot over 2 weeks and crafting that into a 5-minute video. So the storytelling aspect of that is super important. Don't get caught up in the flashy cameras and the, you know, all the fancy stuff that you might see on a video shoot, but it's really that storytelling aspect. So I think we also talked about schooling, and I went to the Cronkite School at ASU, journalism degree. Wasn't a super big fan of journalism. That's more for people like Bethany, but I loved the video side of that and the production side. And so still use a lot of what I learned with writing and communicating, but I just get to do what I think is fun and creative, which is the production side, and leave the journalism to much more qualified people like Bethany. So.
Thank you. Sounds like you guys did have a lot of fun in your breakout room. Do you have any advice for CSOs before we wrap it up?
Yeah, just what I said before. Don't be afraid to work hard. And I loved what Jeff said before. It takes time. I started my business right after I graduated in 2011. And again, like what Bethany said, I didn't eat very well for a while. It took me a couple of years to really get that going and to catch fire. But after a couple of years and you build relationships and your work gets out there, and if you do good work, people will talk about you. So time, hard work, and certainly passion. I love what I get to do. And sometimes I have to remind myself, like, oh yeah, this is my job. This is weird. I really like this. So, so work hard, try to figure out what you love to do, and pursue that.
Thank you so much, Sam. It was a pleasure to have you on the call today. How about you, Deia? Any advice, and how did your breakout room go?
The breakout room was awesome. We had some really great questions. I think one question that I really enjoyed answering was like, what courses should someone take who's thinking about being a director or filmmaker? And I kind of realized that what was most important for me was taking a really wide variety of of classes and getting life experience. I didn't start being a filmmaker until I was in my late 20s. So I had all different jobs. I studied all different things, from literature and philosophy to politics and then of course the hard sciences and arts and all those different topics led me to different life experiences. And I feel like if you're a storyteller, that's really valuable. If you have your own experiences, you can relate to people. And I think listening is such an important skill in being a filmmaker or storyteller, to really understand other people so you can do their story justice. So learn as much as you can about as many different things and yeah, get all different types of experience.
That's some great advice. Thank you, Deia. It was great hearing about your story and all your work with filmmaking. How about you, Bethany?
We talked about some fun things, like that wombats poop cubes. So that was fun. I'm always eager to share that fact. I think it's amazing. But we also talked about the role of your opinion when you're writing journalism, and how your opinion doesn't actually matter because what's really important is getting across the truth to the best of your ability. And we also had a really good conversation about work-life balance, because I'm really passionate about my job, super passionate, but there's only so many hours in the day and so many brain cells in your head, and you need time away from what you do, especially if what you do is the news cycle, and the news cycle is literally everywhere with an internet connection. You need to get away and set boundaries and make sure that you have time to be a human.
Thanks, Bethany. I know I had a great time in your breakout room. It's lots of fun hearing about all the different things that you do. And let's wrap it up with Jeff. And how did your breakout room go, and any advice for CSOs?
We talked about challenges, and the question that was posed was, what's the biggest challenge that we've faced at Litterati? And the truth is, we face challenges every day. And I think it's not about necessarily identifying the biggest one. It's just knowing that they're coming. And it's not the challenges that you know that are coming are the most difficult. It's the ones that you don't know are coming. And so it's like, how do you just prepare emotionally to handle that? So that for me was a really important piece of the conversation in the breakout room. And, if you look at Sam as a producer and a chief creative officer, Deia as a filmmaker, and Bethany as a writer and a journalist, and I started my career as a writer. Even though we have 4 very different backgrounds, the one common thread for all of us, and you've heard it time and time again, is storytelling. And so the guidance that I always try to live by is, can you be clear, concise, and compelling? Because that's really what it takes to communicate. And I think the thing I would leave you with is, when you're trying to solve some of these biggest problems and you're not maybe sure like what to do next or where to go, think about when you're 99 years old, sitting in your rocking chair, looking back on life, the decision you make right now, are you really going to regret trying to solve some massive problem? And if the answer is no, go for it.
After them, and that we all had some really great discussion, and I'm looking forward to panels similar to this one that will occur in the future. So let's close with everyone saying the CSO motto. CSOs, don't just hope it happens.
Make it happen.
Make it happen.
An incredible panel. Thank you to all of our panelists. You guys were incredible. Thanks for staying on extra time today. I think it went very well. Thank you to all of our CSO moderators and facilitators. What a great opportunity to connect with you STEM professionals in creative careers, and helping me share with the CSOs how important it is to tell the story. So thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Great to see all of you. Great to have all of our CSOs and others on the call. We will clip the video and share it out on our YouTube channel. So I appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
thank you.